Hi there, welcome to the Isogo TV podcast from isogostrong.com. I'm your host, Becky Hammond, and you and I, we gather here on this podcast to fixate on strength in our families and on our teams. Because when we can start from a place where we assume strength, we can make the relationships around us easier. This is episode 126, and today we get to jump into a 3-part mini-series on well-being together. These days, as uncertainty continues to persist, we're all kind of carrying around an additional level of stress that weighs on us. Sometimes it's hard to recognize it until you really stop and observe. It's there. It's an extra weight, and it's challenging our feelings of well-being at every level. In this series, we're going to chat about what we can do about it, how we can practically impact and improve our sense of well-being. The strengths perspective, and specifically the CliftonStrengths StrengthsFinder language, can really help you get there. Over the past several months, since the onset of the impact of COVID-19 around the world, leaders, spouses, parents, team members, coaches, friends, they've opened their thoughts and behaviors to me to share how they're really doing and what they're doing to cope, to be well. The best are fighting for well-being in 3 key ways. So in this episode, it's just you and me chatting about these 3 key influencers on well-being. I'll share what I'm seeing, some great stories of strengths-based well-being, and my own experience in what it looks like to try and fail and try again. So let's dive into this first episode on well-being by using strengths. Hello, everyone. We are going to do this a little differently today. I'm just going to pretend like I'm interviewing myself. Isn't that great? Typically when we do kind of more of a teacher kind of learner style, one of these podcasts, I talk right to camera and have something kind of pretty well scripted and outlined. And today I just wanted to chat with you about kind of an introduction here to this little mini series on well-being. And we are going to talk today about some things that I have been noticing over the last several months. I would say, we're recording August. Hopefully you're listening to this in September sometime or after of 2020. And for the past 6 months or so, I've had the privilege and honor of working with some amazing leaders, as well as just having people show up and share their stories here. And one of the themes that have come up is how the best of the best are using their strengths to commit to a sense of well-being. And I will be the first to say that it doesn't always happen. It's like a constant pattern of trying and falling short and trying and falling short. But as long as we kind of have well-being in our sights and we feel equipped, that's one of the things that I learned especially from a lot of the interviews is, with our strengths, we can feel more equipped to feel more well, to have a greater sense of well-being. The statistics potentially that people who get to live in their strength zone every day are 3 times more likely to report a sense of well-being in their lives. And it's because not only are they getting to do fun things because they're doing things that energize them through their strengths, the things that fill them up, but also potentially because they are using their strengths to be well. And so what I've noticed over the last, like I said, 6 or 7 months or so, is that there are 3 kind of main categories of places that people are the best are using their strengths to pursue well-being. And those are by taking a timeout according to their strengths, not like a timeout, like sit on the chair because you did something bad, timeout. Can you tell that we have young children? But taking a timeout and doing it by strength. It's going to look different for different people because you have a different filter of the world through your strengths. I use the CliftonStrengths language, so I will say through your top 5 strengths or through your dominant strengths. The second is to connect by strength. So this is all about the people that are around you and the way that you connect with them. And then the third is about moving by strength. So this is about your physical body and moving your physical body. And it's not going to look the same for you as it does to the person next to you, depending on how you're wired, what your filter of the world is. And in my perspective, through your top 5 strengths. So that's how we're gonna talk about it here through your lens of your Clifton strengths. Throughout this episode, as we chat about these things, just as I was brainstorming, just some really great examples from people that I have spoken with, either through a coaching relationship or a friend relationship, or through this Strengths in Crisis series, which if you haven't caught that, you should definitely go back and catch that starting at episode 109. And I will try to also mention the episodes if I'm referencing a story from somebody who we got to chat with here on the podcast. So the first key of using your strengths to be well is using your strengths in a timeout. Like I said, it's not a punishment timeout, but more like a breath, like a breather, like taking a moment, an intentional, regular break to refuel and to reset and to center yourself. I think about in episode 115, we got to hear from Melissa Jill, and she is a business owner, and she is in a very tough business industry right now, in the wedding industry. And as everything kind of began to crumble, she admitted that she was feeling like, I think she said she threw herself a pity party for at least a week, and just was really feeling discouraged by everything that was happening. And she set aside intentional time to look for sparks. So Melissa operates from the lens of an activator. And so she thrives in creating sparks and being sparked. And so she set some time aside, I think it was like a Thursday or a Friday, and had this amazing idea and then sparked an entire new product for her business. And that was because of a timeout, of intentional time set aside to do something that she wasn't otherwise going to do. I also think about a gal that I have had the privilege of starting to coach recently. She's an amazing leader and kind of is in, I would say, a middle management role. And she realized that in her work, especially over the last few months, she just wasn't happy. Was not in a happy professional place. And so what she did was she took intentional time to be coached. I mean, might be a selfless plug a little bit. I didn't mean for it to be that way. It just feels like it's coming out that way. But it's, she wanted to look for a happier place professionally. And what we've discovered is that was driven by her belief strength, that there was a mismatch between what she's doing every day and how she's wired. And, because she couldn't change her job right now, sometimes that's not possible, though you can dream about what might lie ahead that's different. She realized that by taking this time out, she realized that she could get that belief, that core need fulfilled in another way, and only by taking a time out, which her husband highly encouraged, because he said, you got to be happier or stop talking about it. I've been there for sure. I also think about our friend Erin Passons over in episode 111, just talking about, feeling like, man, I don't get to be myself, like strategic, woo, like these things have been robbed from me, especially there at the beginning when everything was incredibly uncertain, and when it kind of felt like, well, when things go back to normal, we don't get to think like that anymore. But she talked about just, opening a bottle of wine and talking with her husband and debriefing. And it makes me think of just strong communication strength, strong relator strength. And when she's feeling low in some of these other areas, kind of pulling up on leaning into some of these other things, communication and relator, and just sitting down and having meaningful conversations, taking the time out to do that. That probably also connects with our second key as well, which is to connect with people around you. And then my final example here that I could think of was about was from Anna Runyon, who is the CEO of a successful online career business. And she just talked about taking a professional timeout and a breath to refocus. She's one of those people, high focus, high achiever. She's one of these people who is like extremely goal oriented. And she realized, like, these goals that we set at the beginning of the year aren't going to cut it for Q2 of 2020. And so she took a timeout, literally with her team, just said, okay, guys, we're refocusing on keeping ourselves well and serving our customers. And that has proven to be an amazing reset and a refocus for her. So those are some of the examples from from this first key to well-being by strength is timeout. And you realize like this does not look the same for everybody. This timeout, this recentering, this regular breaks to refuel looks different for one set of strengths compared to another set of strengths. So, it might not sound very resetting to you to, attend a class and try to find a spark. If you are high intellection or high other thinking strengths, you might just say, you know what, I just need a break to like be in my head for a little while and not have to be with all the people that suddenly I'm working with and living with every day. So that timeout is going to be according to your strengths. All right, the second key is about connection. So connecting to other people, but by using your strengths. So it's going to look different depending on what your set of strengths are. And so this has to do with continuing to build authentic, vulnerable relationships with the people who are closest to you. And what does that look like, especially in a time of uncertainty and crisis, to pursue community well-being, to pursue family well-being? I think of the very first interview of the Strengths in Crisis series with Tyann Osborne, and just her reflection about even preparing for that conversation that we got to have. She sat on the porch watching deer out in the plains of Texas with her husband and saying, how am I using my strengths to thrive or survive during this time when I'm not able to position them in one way or another like I usually do? I was actually thinking through her strengths, and maybe Ty, you can comment in on that. But I was even just thinking about this maximizer. She talked about having to maximize other things besides her speaking business that she runs, and even just that, like sitting on the front porch and just thinking, like, how can we be better? How can I use these strengths to get us to a different level? And since that episode, she has done some of the things that she had talked about, like moving and creating a different way of life because of some of this uncertainty that's been going on. So congrats to you on that, Ty. That was episode 109. I also think of some close friends of ours who they together are a couple who are strong in belief and woo and restorative. And a couple times over this summer, since it got a little bit safer to be together, we got some random messages that just said, hey, can we stop by? Stopping by a cabin in the woods takes a little bit of effort, like a 2-hour out of your way effort. And it just was a really beautiful example to me of using their strengths. Like, man, we got to be with people, this woo thing. We believe in the power of friendship for each other. And so we got to be with people. And so just reaching out, kind of putting themselves out there. We could say no, but they put themselves out there and said, can we stop by? And they have. I think of the conversation that Murray and Guest and I got to have together in episode 114. He talked about having daily afternoon backgammon games with his wife, Tammy, doing a question jar with his family. And to me, both of those experiences during this time, as he's pursuing community well-being and family well-being, scream of his relator strength. Like, man, yeah, let's use our strengths to be well. Let me provide deep one-on-one connection like I'm wired to do through my relator strengths. I also think of David, my husband, also has high relator, and over these last several months, as he has jumped into a new role, completely new career, even though it's virtual, he has used his strengths to find a best friend at work. And just the way he's naturally going to be and to do, because he is a high relator. He's going to have a best friend at work, and these two guys, they have daily chats together about what they're doing, what they're missing. And might I also add that they are a pretty cool strengths partnership. They have very complementary strengths, as in opposite strengths. So that also makes it valuable to both of them as well. And then lastly, I think of our episode 113 with Amanda Flisher. And I was just pretty awestruck by the communication that she talked about having with her husband as their world started to collide. Someone like her who's always worked from home, and now she has a high school teacher husband who is also working from home, and of course their kids being there, and the communication and connection that it took to now not only run a household, but to run both their businesses from their house. So that's the connection. And once again, you notice that it's the way that people connect has to do with the lens of their strengths. The things that are naturally true about them, the ways that they naturally feel and think and behave, that's the way that they're pursuing well-being. It's probably not going to be my way of pursuing well-being to randomly ask people if I can stop by. Because just social variability is not one of those huge things for connection. But I'll share a little later about some of the ways that actually are through my lens of strengths. And so you're going to connect with others through your strengths, but that is going to be a huge part of your well-being, the way that you continue to connect and build vulnerable relationships. So that's the first one, was taking an intentional time out through your strengths, by your strengths. The second is connecting with others through your strengths and by your strengths. And then the third is about movement. So we're talking about like physical body movement. So this is all has to do with your physical well-being, though, as you know, if you've ever felt like you have been in a really good physical place or a really poor physical place, you know how much that affects your mental and emotional and even spiritual well-being as well. Because our bodies are just such a huge part of our psyche as well. And so this is all about investing in your physical body. That also lends to your mental state as well. I think of, so there's one episode that I think of recently. This was actually not a part of our Strengths in Crisis series. This was a part of the Leaders Who Give a Damn series about lockdown leadership and the 5 themes that the best leaders are showing right now. Like those leaders that you're like, wow, you are still thriving, even though there is so much uncertainty all around us. That is, those leaders exhibited these 5 themes that Murray Guest and I have had the privilege of kind of siphoning through everything that we've been learning from the leaders that are around us. And one of them was about self-care and well-being. And a story that Murray shared about one of his leaders was about helmet time. So for this particular guy, I think the story goes that Murray and him were having a virtual coaching conversation, and Murray said, "Oh, there's a bike in your background." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's my bike, but I haven't really gotten to use it in a while." And Murray said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I'm busy." And then he said, "Well, what happens when you're riding your bike?" He's like, "Oh, well, yeah, it's like a physical thing, but man, I get to clear my head and think." And Murray said, "Well, what would it look like to you to put that back in?" And the report back was he had been adding that back into his lifestyle and his weekly routine. And that helmet time, that time inside the helmet, was so good, not just for his body, but for his mind as well. And then there's a few other examples that just came to my mind from previous life this continuous life that I have been living, that has to do with some friends that I've just been impressed with how they've used their strengths to get them up and moving. So I have a friend named Angela, who is one of my very first mentors in strengths. It just does some amazing work, actually works with strengths and athletes. And she has all these amazing relationship strengths. And she realized like setting her alarm or even having an accountability partner, those things like weren't the best for her. Though the accountability partner, I think she would say that works pretty well too. But if she didn't have that it just wasn't motivating for her. It wasn't fun to just get out there, even when she lived in like a beautiful place like San Diego. And so I remember seeing a picture one time, and she had taken a picture on her run in this amazing beach setting. And she had written on her hand the names of people that she was thinking about and praying for as she was running. And that was motivating for her because of this amazing set of relationship strengths that she has that was what was motivating. That what was getting her body to move. I also think of my good friend Kimberly, who just has high woo, high communication, and some of her best times are, it's the accountability of getting out there. But even during this time where it's been difficult to try to spend time with people, she has engaged with another neighborhood friend and done social distance walking. She has high woo, high communication, like I said, and just kind of used those things to fuel getting up in the morning, to fuel an experience of getting her physical body moving. And of course, that kind of goes back up to key number 2 as well, of continuing those meaningful connections with people. But doing it all through strength, even if you have to do it at 6 feet away. And then finally, I think of an amazing woman who works in a medical facility that I have had the privilege of working with over the past, I don't know, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now. And her name is Jill, and she is like hard charging, executing strengths plus maximizer. So if you know anything about strengths, you know that this is a powerful combination. And her morning routine is second to none. And she's been doing it faithfully over and over for many, many years, driven by discipline and responsibility and achiever. And of course, that maximizer, seeing what's good, but what could be better. And her morning routine is what she does in order to move her body, to invest in this physical part of well-being. So those are the stories for Move. So we talked about the 3 keys of well-being, especially in this time of crisis, to rethinking about what is it that's going to contribute to my well-being in times that continue to be uncertain. Well, it's going to be our timeout, our connection with others, and our movement in our bodies. And you're going to do each of those in a different way, depending on how you are wired through your strengths. And so as we close up here, I just wanted to lay to bear the ways that I have done this. I was feeling like, well, if I'm going to say that people who are doing this well are doing this, I should see, am I doing this well myself? And there've been some successes and some things to celebrate, and there have also been some things like falling short, squeezing out the things that really make me feel well based on my strengths. So my top 5 strengths from the CliftonStrengths StrengthsFinder, it's called now, are achiever, arranger, learner, belief, and connectedness. So that's kind of like mostly executing, a little bit of thinking, tiny bit of relationship. And then also followed by things that do seem to come up a lot, like discipline, competition, and intellection. Those are things that really, they are starving. They seem hungry a lot. And so I need to feed them. And so the timeout, this is the one that I would say gets the most crunched, gets the least amount of attention. I mean, if you've been around for a little while, you know that we have 5 kids who are 9 and under. So 9, 7, 5, 3, and 10 months, actually, just turned. And that just ends up, and I run my business from home, and now David works from home, which actually probably makes more opportunity for timeouts. But this last summer, I've just been realizing how much the physicality of my timeout really matters. I've been able to do some ceramics, like throwing on a potter's wheel ceramics. It's something that I did in my previous life. Started in 2001 and probably did it for 13 years before all of a sudden had kids, I guess, and moved around the world and just didn't make it a priority. And I've been able to do that here, and I've realized just how much joy that gives me and how much refueling that gives me. There's something about having my hands in clay and in dirt and giving my mind space to think and process, has been amazing. So that's that kind of that intellection piece. And then also, I've also listened to some pretty great podcasts that had nothing to do with throwing or with trying to get myself mental space, it's all about feeding that learner. As we're gearing up for the next school year and taking on a new curriculum for the kids and all that, just being able to have space to listen to that. I could do it while I'm doing the dishes. Not quite as filling as when I'm doing ceramics, though it does help. I was just talking to a strong mom group the other day, and just, when people are like, yeah, well, I know what this strength needs. It needs time, time to think. Like, that's hard to come by these days with little kids. And we just talked through, what does that look like to take advantage of all the little moments of timeouts. So maybe you want your timeout to look like a weekend retreat away, but maybe what it can look like is getting up 5 minutes earlier. Or maybe what it can look like is while you are, sweeping floors or doing dishes or putting the kids to bed, you just have those moments where you say, okay, these are moments that are free to me for my brain, at least, and for my mind. And so how can I take advantage of those things to refuel and reset and recenter? All right. And then the next one is about connection. So for me, this one has been a little easier. I don't know why this last several months, maybe just because I need it. I have high connectedness. So to me, all these relationships that I've kept with different people are really important to me. So maybe in a time of crisis, it feels even more important. High belief kind of getting in there as well for just human life and human value. And of course, people I love, their value. So I've been doing, I don't know if you guys heard of Voxer, the Voxer app. I've been doing that with some friends, and a regular Zoom connect with some friends. That's been really great, which interestingly, right, we could have done this all along, but we haven't. So let's just count that as a plus and a bonus for a time that otherwise has given us a lot of challenge. One-on-one dates with the kids. I've taken them out to do ceramics and things like that. Laundry folding dates with David is one thing that came to mind. So we have 7 people in our family, lots of laundry, and both of us have very little desire or love of that part of daily life. And so what we've done since we've been here at the log cabin, is we've had Tuesday and Friday night laundry dates. So we do, it's super awesome motivation. So that's high achiever right there. Super awesome motivation to get the laundry done through the day, push it through, but don't have to do anything. Don't have to fold it or anything. Just like push it through. And then we get to connect by folding laundry and maybe watching Netflix or chatting. I know it sounds like the 20-year-old me would be like, wow, you have an amazing life that you have laundry dates. But to me, just it fills a spot, that achiever, that arranger, like fitting it all in. And then also feeds my husband's relator as well. And then I also, I don't know, maybe 10 or so weeks ago, became a part of a book club, and I'm leading the next book. So that's been cool. I would say learner definitely fuels that, as well as connectedness, just because it's super cool that we're all coming from different places and are reading the same book and trying to get something out of it. And then finally, the last key is about moving. So that's we've been trying this last, I think it's been 4 or 5 weeks now, doing a 4:30 wake up. David is working East Coast hours, so he starts at 6. So that's just kind of been the only place that we can find to really commit to moving our bodies. So we've been doing it. Of course, we've gone to bed earlier, which I've never been good at, but when you get up at 4:30 a few days in a row, you start getting more tired at night. So go figure. And that, like I said, also kind of feeds that physical and mental and spiritual side, because I'm up, I'm centered and grounded, not only in my body, but in my soul before the rest of the house gets up. And I don't know where my strengths come in there. I think competition a little bit, like he's getting out of bed, I'm getting out of bed. Discipline for sure. Achiever loves getting something done right away. So those are the motivators there for moving my body by strength. So there's examples from me and from some amazing leaders, coaches, consultants, friends, parents, moms, fathers, spouses that you have been able to hear from a little bit today. Some real practical examples of what people have done to use their strengths to pursue well-being, even during a time of uncertainty and a time of ongoing crisis. So I would love to hear your examples as well. Where have you found that you've been able to pursue well-being? Or now that you're thinking through about how maybe you could pursue well-being through your strengths, what's one idea that you have that could help you pursue a greater sense of well-being? That you could do that through the lens of your strengths by doing more of what you love, and focusing in on the way that you're naturally wired and using those things to fill you up and give you a greater sense of well-being. So that's all for today. Bye now. Your individual strengths really do impact the way you feel and the well-being you sense in your everyday life. Over the next 2 episodes, you'll get to hear 2 interviews of me conducted by Kat Rippey, who is a CEO coach, a business owner, and a mom. We dive in even further into well-being as a leader and well-being as a person who is just trying to balance it all. So I hope you check those 2 episodes out as well in the coming weeks. Before we sign off with each other, let's just make sure that we talk about your strengths for a quick second and this super accessible virtual coaching experience. If you don't know your top 5 Clifton strengths from the StrengthsFinder yet, or if you do know them but haven't really done too much with them yet, these strengths of yours truly can be keys to your own well-being during this time. I'd love to help you, give you a jump start as your virtual coach in the Strengths Startup Program. This email coaching series from me, you'll get insights to your talents and strengths, as well as some action that you can take to make relationships easier around you. If you go over to isogostrong.com/strengthsstartup, you can check it out. There are 2 options there. One if you already know your top 5 strengths, and one if you have yet to discover them. So you can choose the track that's best for you. And because you've joined here, this Isogo TV community, please use this discount code. It's virtualcoach5 for $5 off. That's virtualcoach and the number 5 for $5 off. I'd be honored to get a chance to get to know you and your strengths and help you get a kickstart to greater well-being through your top 5 strengths. You know, you and your strengths, they really do have the power to make a ripple effect in your family and on your team and across the entire world. The world needs your strengths. So learn them, love them, and live them in your own circles of influence. Until next time on Isogo TV.